Round two. Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds recognized.
So I'm back again, I see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, Ms. McFadden, a quick follow-up to a conversation you were having with the chairman around CDBG DR awards. I want to clarify this. In the instance of where we are, let's say Lee County, Florida, would Lee County, Florida have essentially the unilateral authority to make adjustments to an award in CDBG DR money if, in light of their work plan that they provide to HUD, that they realize in actuality there are adjustments that do need to be made? Do they have that authority to make that decision?
Not unilaterally, sir. We need to have some conversations to understand why the current needs of the community aren't what we reflected. So per statute, 70% of the funds have to primarily benefit people in communities that are up to 80% of area median income. So if there's any hope to do other than primarily benefit low and moderate income people, that's definitely going to require a waiver. But when we look at between the different categories of activities, we need to have some conversation, but the permission to do that won't be unreasonably withheld.
Okay, so a quick follow-up to that, because you make a key point about their percentage of median income. If the county or counties or state, and this is a more broad question throughout the country of this kind of a program, if the determination is made that key infrastructure improvements are critical to the livelihood of said residents, is HUD open to that interpretation of disaster recovery awards under HUD?
Historically, we have granted waivers when to serve low and moderate income people, you have to do something that's going to serve all the people, for example, doing infrastructure repairs.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Mr. Sanchez, missed you the last time, I'm back. Obviously, we do understand here about SBA disaster recovery awards. You stated in your testimony that $1.9 billion was approved by SBA. I'm going to assume when you said the impacted area or highly impacted area, $371 million, that's, for argument's sake, let's say it's specifically to the Barrier Island region here in Southwest Florida. Is there a disconnect between loan approval and loan disbursement? And the reason why I ask that is because I've had several constituents who were frustrated with SBA, that SBA would give them an approval for the loan, but disbursement is at some time off in the future that SBA never told constituents when disbursement was going to occur. And the reason I ask that is, recovering banker, if I approve a loan, like next day, we're dispersing funds. So can you speak to that?
Sure. Just a point of clarification, the $1.9 billion is for the entire disaster. The $371 million is for businesses specifically. Typically, lending works out 80% homeowner renters, 20% businesses.
Fair enough.
But in disbursement, there is a disconnect, and I think we're tackling that. You've heard it from your constituents. I've been here at least 4 times meeting with local folks. I've taken some of those constituent calls myself to figure out what the issues are. The best way to think about it is there are grants, and then at the end of the day, we're still a complex financial transaction. We're trying to figure out how to make it less complex and more customer-driven. And I get the frustration. After Hurricane Ike, it took my mom 4 years to get back into her home. Those are that's the view that I come from to these things. And so the way it works is you get a loan approval for whatever amount that is. Initially, we disperse $25,000 so they have at least that much capital to keep moving forward and begin recovery. The friction and the points become is then, because it's generally modeled after a construction loan, someone has to submit additional paperwork to release more funds. So contractor estimates, building permits, insurance documentation. One of the things we're doing is trying to do a better job of being more forthright with the customer, of saying what you have to provide in the future. And within our rulemaking authority, to the chairman's question of what can we all do better, is we've heard it here for the past year. We've taken that back. We're rolling up our sleeves, and we're delivering. There's more work to do, but here's what we've done to reduce the paperwork. You no longer have to provide that, again, the duplication of benefits. You no longer have to provide that AIP, that assurance of insurance proceeds. You don't have to do that anymore. Don't have to do permits anymore. We instituted that, hearing back from folks here on the ground in February and May, so that's already having some impacts. And so for us, we still have some paperwork we're going to have to require, but we're reducing that number to be able to keep that money flowing as quickly as we can.
Okay, follow up to that. So if the process, generally speaking, is the way a bank would manage a construction loan, where you're having to verify receipt of key documents in order to release new funds, totally understand that piece. Broader question, does SBA have the manpower in order to effectively manage that when you have tens of thousands of newly approved recipients coming in all at the same time trying to get disbursements? Can SBA effectively manage the construction loan, for argument's sake, the construction loan dispersal process in a disaster recovery scenario?
Yes, sir. So a little bit of perspective. We're currently on the ground in 22 disasters across this country, 9 states, 2 territories, 200 counties. And we learned some lessons during COVID. And some of the biggest transformations I talked about was the customer service experience. Step 1 was right people, right jobs. The lending piece, direct loans, used to be under my shop for recovery and resilience. We moved that now to capital access. They do lending day in and day out. So right people, right jobs. They've got the skill, they've got the talent, and a step
But
to
Mr.
that.
Sanders, real quick, it's not about talent or skill. It's manpower and scalability. If you're in 22 areas of the country managing multiple natural disasters from the disaster recovery loan program under SBA, do you have the manpower to keep up with all of the constituency requests in all its jurisdiction? Because I will tell you, that's like a loan department. That's like a loan department at a $2 billion bank having fresh capital for $10 billion. You ain't got the manpower to do $10 billion in loan disbursements. You don't. And so that's why I go back to that original question. I want to move off of that because I think that's something that we probably with SBA need to figure out. I want to talk inspectors, Mr. McCool. Got to come back to you. In a letter that was sent on March 21 and 23 to Administrator Criswell, I sent requesting 2 additional program delivery managers, 1 additional task force lead, 2 additional site inspector crew leads, 12 additional site inspectors for Cape Coral, Fort Myers Beach, and Sanibel. 5 months later, still no response from the administrator. Me. It's like, I don't even have a response from the administrator 5 months later. Why? What is the issue with inspectors being able to be deployed to our area? Because I'm quite sure you understand it's hard for my local government officials to get infrastructure projects up and running if I can't even get a FEMA inspector down here to approve what my locals have already inspected, basically to sign off that it's good to go for rebuilding. So what's the status and why the backlog and why is it so difficult for us to be able to get FEMA inspectors in to just sign off on the work that my local governments have been doing for our infrastructure projects to get rebuilt and back on track?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. I will track down the response to that letter. I can tell you on the ground we have 150 inspectors. Here we have 50. All the inspections are on track. Lee County Schools, for example, will be done within the next 2 weeks. And all of the recovery scoping meetings that our program delivery managers do are 100% complete. So I will get more information. I'll work with your staff and get more information.
Yeah, I would like to know that because I remember we had a meeting and some of those officials were in this room and we were having meetings about the issue with inspectors.
Right.
And just to be blunt, Mr. McCool, I started talking to the press, started tweeting, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, somebody called. Like you said something in a presser and we got a call from FEMA. And just to be blunt, I just don't think it should operate that way. Regardless of who the member is or what the constituency is, if they need to be able to get those inspectors into the area in almost in a strike force type of response, then that's just what needs to be figured out. And again, that kind of goes back to one of my earlier questions about what are the statutory
I'm going to ask the question.
the statutory refinement that needs to happen from Congress. Last question, Mr. Sanchez, Mr. McCool, thanks so much for all the witnesses being here. Last question, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence.
Yes.
Last question on this, the runaround. A lot of my constituents have had issues with paperwork fiascos, something's not being spelt right, having to get another document, the initial decline or the initial disapproval they will receive from FEMA or SBA, and then being told actually in this very building that you're going to get an initial decline. That just means you have to go back and go through all the things that went wrong and then reapply. What needs to happen to stop that from occurring? Because when people are in a disaster recovery mode, They don't have time to check every dot. They're trying to assess their lives. So can you guys speak to that, and what are we going to do in your recommendations so that people get the help that they need when they need it, and I have to go through a regulatory checkbox?
Sure, glad to start. From our side is we have 22 people still here on the ground. The approval and the first disbursement is one step. We understand there are frustrations for the rest of that, and so those customer issues I've been involved with myself, handled probably 5 or 6 of those to get a lens on those, and it is the paperwork. So one, we're reducing what people don't really need to submit to us. It's a matter of process. We're taking outside of the rules. And then working to make sure that for the rest of those, we're pivoting now. We're not waiting until this recovery is over. We're changing those rules today. And so those are the kinds of things we want to listen to. You alluded to being referred from FEMA to SBA to be declined to access other things at FEMA. We've already reduced the threshold last hurricane season because we got that bureaucratic red tape out of the way. We were able to put an additional $38 million on the ground to disaster survivors that need it most. I think working with FEMA and our folks, local, state, and federal, I expect in that partnership that will be, I know from our folks on the other side of the table, I think it's less than a year before that's going to be done away with, so you don't have to go through that step. And so I know across the board, we're figuring out how we can do better, work quicker, and be more customer-driven.
Sir, you're right. One of the things our administrator is trying to do is cut down on the bureaucratic red tape and the access to our programs. For example, in the past, if you were a renter or a homeowner, you'd have only certain documents to show that to prove that. We've streamlined all that. You can do a whole myriad of electric bills or even a letter from a county emergency manager or a county official. Yes, I'm a resident of that structure. Try to get access to our programs. And we meet, as you well know, people at the worst time of their lives. And when they're in a disaster recovery center, maybe with just with a Walmart bag, we have to give them the personal attention that they need and deserve. And you have our assurance that our caseworkers at FEMA, who are still on the job, will not rest until every survivor gets what they are authorized to in accordance with our regulations. But we are working hard to reduce the red tape.
Thank you very much.